Chucky. And I'm your friend to the end. Heidi fucking ho. Ha, ha, ha.
And welcome back to Chucky Queers. It's our weekly Chucky coverage, and I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're going to be discussing episode 4 called Just Let Go. You see how I'm like looking at my notes, like, wait, what is this called?
I know, the episode titles are obviously dialogue related, and yet every week I'm just like, wait, what is the title again?
I know. I mean, I think the show is very clever, but the episode titles are not part of that clever aspect. So I'm like, I wish they were more memorable, but
right.
Whatever. We have a hospital episode, Joe, following up on last week's kind of a massive cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And as much as we said, oh, maybe it was episode 2 was like bridging the gap between like the kind of bonkers first episode to whatever the third episode was going to be. This kind of was the same thing, like, but more so bridging this first part of the story to, I mean, really whatever we're getting after this, which, wow, I'm not really making a lot of sense, am I?
No, I understand completely what you're saying. Like, episode 2 seemed like it was a bridge to like the introductory story about this queer kid and the bullying stuff. And then it was like, and Chucky's now going to be a bigger fixture. And then in episode 3, that didn't exactly happen, but we did get that really epic fire. And it was like, now it's going to start to take off. Yeah. And this episode kind of dials it back a little bit and then scales it back up again at the end.
Right. And I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but the preview for next week does include one Tiffany and one Nica. So, I mean, but even with the way this episode, I mean, sorry, not even the way it ends, but just the episode as a whole, like we have Jake and Lexy taking center stage here, working together, reluctantly so. What did you think of this, especially given the, I don't know if she can come back from this remark you made about her prank?
Yeah. Oh boy. The show is really playing with my emotions with this character. And I'm kind of loving it because I do think that she is a reprehensible bitch. Like we have called this teenage girl some really nasty comments. And I think she's earned them. But then the show is also really careful at making sure that she's not just an inhuman villain that we want to die. Like, I still want her to die. I'm still kind of secretly hoping that Chucky is going to kill her. But then episodes like this clarify that she's not all bad. And it almost gave me these Buffy vibes where you're like, oh, people who shouldn't be working together are forced to work together. And it produces some interesting conflict as a result.
I agree. I like the Buffy comparison too. But yeah, I mean, one of my favorite narratives is, I guess it's a trope, where like people on opposing sides have to come together to work. I love that. Because you can mine comedy out of it, but also like genuine character development. Yeah. The only problem I have with this episode really, it took Jake way too long to stand up for himself and be like, you're a fucking cunt. Like, why wouldn't I want to kill you? Right. It instead came first from her parents, who at least got to like deliver her some like, you're a bitch and we hate you, child.
Oh boy, those parents are reprehensible as well. But I will say, not to detour too much away from the Jake and Lexy stuff, because I do think that's the heart of this episode. But I did really enjoy the parental conflict when all of them went at each other in the waiting room. I was like, let's dish, because you are all shitty parents and it's time for you to call each other out.
Yeah, I mean, because the parents are kind of like, they're the aspect of the show that has really been the least developed and probably underserved from a narrative standpoint. So I agree with you. I liked this confrontation in front of the vending machine, but I was like, oh, I want more. But then when they dragged Devin's mom into it, I was like, oh, good, because she's really getting on my nerves too.
She's such a perplexing character to me, because she has obviously honed in on Jake and she clearly thinks that he is the one committing these murders. Like, never mind the doll. The doll is just at the scene of the crime. And I do think that's fascinating. I do think it's important in terms of like, we need to have a cop character in the mix to keep this a little bit realistic. But I'm just perplexed that in this episode, she questions Jake, a minor with no parents, even though the parents are at the hospital. No lawyers in this show, which is interesting as well.
And it's a murder investigation. Like, I mean, they know from the get-go that, what's the kid's name that died last week?
Oliver.
You
never did learn his name.
I have it in my notes, but I didn't want to look. I mean, I have like a lot of notes.
Okay. Good.
But yeah, no, and again, like, we don't really get a lot from Devin here. And I think I've said before that he's, it's not the actor's fault, but again, like, he's just kind of like Blandy McBlanderson right now. So given with what this episode does, I mean, luckily it gives him agency. He figures out the Chucky stuff pretty fucking quick.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he's got that true crime podcast, so we know that he knows how to do research. And I did like how that gets used as a narrative device to then instigate more flashbacks as we get to see Charles Lee Ray as a 14-year-old at a boys' home. And there's like this complicated backstory. And of course, it has a little Easter egg tied into the original Child's Play film.
Yeah. So this is the Eddie Caputo mention, right? Okay. Refresh my, is he the one that Chucky blows up his house in the first movie? Okay, yeah. Perfect. I should have done that before I came in, but I was like, I know that name, Eddie Caputo.
Oh, I knew the name, and then was like, Google like Eddie Caputo Child's Play.
This is something too. I mean, I think we'll have more to talk about in this area next week because I mean, we're bringing Tiffany and Nica, so it's gonna obviously ideally play off of some of the stuff from Cult of Chucky, but like this is this Eddie Caputo bit is really a mention for fans. It doesn't affect the quality of the show or your enjoyment of it if you don't know who Eddie Caputo is.
No, and that's the best way to put in an Easter egg, right? Like all of us who know Chucky are like, oh, I know that, or Bing, I know exactly who that is. But casual fans who might never have consumed a Chucky film will just be like, oh, okay, so this is more grooming mentorship from a burgeoning serial killer. Got it.
Right. Now, of course, based on your complaint last week about how the ickiness you felt with the older person grooming younger person, was some of that assuaged this week since Jake does say no?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I maybe came down a little bit hard on the show last week, but it was just because it was the most interesting kind of queer horror related topic to discuss. This continues that trajectory, but I think it softens it to, because we're not using sexual language and it's not about a child. Like, I know that Eddie is still quite a bit younger than Charles Lee Ray in these flashbacks, but it felt more like Chucky is trying to create connections with people that he thinks he can manipulate. And I do think that that's a safer way to explore the way that Chucky grooms people. So it's not about like, oh, I'm seeking out young boys. It's like, I'm looking to make connections over the fact that we like dead things.
Well, it's also more the fact, I mean, I'm looking for, and it won't say young boys, I'm sure there's a girl somewhere, or maybe Tiffany's targeting the girls, who knows?
Right.
But it's one of the, I mean, I think we posited this last week, where it's, oh, maybe it's like a child army they're trying to build up. But I mean, it does look like that this aspect, at least with like, you know, Chucky grooming Jake, is now officially out the window, maybe, because now we do have the kids teaming up. I mean, and the final shot of this is Chucky flipping them off, and they're all like, "Oh shit!" By the way, his two-faced face, which I loved.
Yeah, it felt like that was another callback, even to like the second Child's Play movie, where he gets like really disfigured in the finale. So I mean, Chucky has been plenty disfigured over
a lot.
I mean, that's one of like the most stellar aspects of, what is it? When he gets the reveal, like he looks like the regular doll, and then like they rub off the makeup or like the facial prosthetics.
Yes, no. Oh, sorry, that's Curse of Chucky. And again, okay, I'm sorry. This is we can wrap up soon. But the other thing, so with Curse of Chucky, I mean, when they released the image, the still image of Chucky, and fans were of course fucking livid. They were like, he looks like shit. Blah blah blah. Where are his scars? Blah blah blah. And it's like, well, if you just shut the fuck up for a minute and wait for the movie to come out and watch the goddamn movie, they explain all that. And so
I think it's so funny that yes, obviously we are always quick to jump on like out of context publicity stills, but particularly in this case, I love the fact that fans were getting so irate about the fact that it seemed like we were not paying attention to continuity anymore. And it's like, oh no, we're still doing that. Like, it's one of Don Mancini's greatest gifts to this franchise, and him being involved at every step of the way is like his memory and his willingness to address previous texts is like chef's kiss. Perfect.
It feels like something though within this fan base though, because like, you know, I mean, I don't know how many times you've seen this, but I've seen so many like, oh, the Chucky show is actually good, like remarks from people. And it's like, we're still doing this? Like, we're 4 episodes in. Like, I mean, again, because that leads you to think, oh, people, even fans of this franchise, don't think the film entries are good, or at least that a TV version of it couldn't possibly be any good. So I mean, I'm glad it's good, but like a lot of these, well, actually things is just like, it's kind of annoying. Like, stop that, people. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the show.
Oh man, people can enjoy the show. People don't seem to understand the show. I mean,
Oh,
the fact that some people don't seem to think that there's any queerness in this show, it's all very perplexing.
listeners, Joe, of course, does an article every week to go over the queerness in this show. Like, he picks one queer scene, usually goes through it. But yeah, the comments on these articles. I mean, of course, we have, from Mr. Mark Harrison. I'm assuming that's a pseudonym. Please stop with the liberal/woke articles. Nobody's interested in your playing the victim mentality. That's directed directly at you.
Yeah.
Of course, blah blah blah. This is woke PC crap. You are, meaning us queer folks, are 3% of the population, and we think we have the right to tell this person that they have to watch a gay Chucky or even a transgender Superman. Which I'm just like, well, Superman was bi. That's where we're going with that. But it's just like all these people getting so up in arms about this shit, and it's like, do you not follow narratives at all? Like, the creator of this character is queer, and like it's so fucking annoying that we're still dealing with this.
I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, like you and I have been doing this now for like many years, and we're kind of used to it, which I think is also why it gets under our skin, because we're just like, it's in the title. We've been doing this for so long. You know what you're going to get when you're listening to us, when you're reading our stuff. Like, this is what we do. Setting that aside, not making it about us and just focusing on the show itself, it's like, sure, like sometimes we make a reach and it's a bit of a big swing. There's no fucking swinging here. It's not subtext. Like, this is a gay show. It's about a gay teenage kid modeled on Don Mancini's childhood. He is an out and proud man, has been for like his entire life, or like 30 years at least. Like, this isn't a reach. This isn't us being liberal social justice snowflake warriors. We're literally just watching the show. You're the idiot.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, the queerness isn't something that's like, I feel like, is being shoved down. I mean, again, I have seen some queer things that it is like, it's heavy-handed messaging. Like, I mean, like, I may still like it or not like it, but like, I'm aware when it's heavy-handed. Nothing here has been heavy-handed so far. So I'm just...
Well, and that's the funniest thing. When the bloody article comes out, they also obviously tweet, and that goes out to like the 1 million+ followers on the bloody account. I've gotten a bunch of people be like, well, the show's not queer enough. It's not really doing anything interesting with queer. So I'm like, well, which one is it?
So basically, we can't make anyone happy. So we're just going to enjoy the show on our own level and just not do this anymore.
Yeah. Okay. You know what?
Well,
for the 5 of you who agree with us, then cool. Let's continue.
Totally fine. We're just going to be angry buggers.
Yep.
So, okay. I mean, like, well, we've kind of already talked about Tiffany and Nica coming up next week, but what do you foresee next week? Because I will tell you that I am fucking excited for their return.
I mean, yeah, we've talked about this numerous times over the last couple of weeks. I think the show is great, even without Tiffany and Nica, but I'm so excited to see what that brand of madness is going to introduce into the show. Like, I actually really, we haven't talked about the hospital horrorness of this episode, the fact that Chucky double fists a bunch of syringes to the point that a man starts to bleed out of his
fingernails,
which is like, sheer camp perfection. I fucking loved it. So that to me suggests that we are going to go into really wacky territory with Tiffany and Nica entering the picture. And I think we should prepare ourselves. I don't think they're going to be a huge part of the episode. I think they'll show up either in the beginning or the end as a kind of glorified cameo, and we'll slowly work them further into the proper episode later.
A part of me is hoping that what we get next week is actually like an entirely, like, we're devoting this to Tiffany and Nica to like bridge the gap between Cult and this series. Now,
that would be fascinating.
I hope that's what happens, but I mean, but I think you're right though. I think it is going to get wilder because, I mean, really the arrival of Tiffany in the movie franchise was the shift of the franchise from like more straightforward horror with a bit of comedy to like horror comedy, then to comedy with like a bit of horror.
Yeah. And I will say, I know that fans have been very excited for the introduction of movie characters. Like, we're still waiting for even more people, right? Like, we're waiting for Kyle to show up, and we're waiting for... I'm probably in the minority, but I hope that we also don't lose focus on the origins of this show, which is Jake and Lexy, and like we need these teen characters to still be the center of the story because it is their story.
I agree. And as of now, like I have faith in Mancini and Co. that we're not going to lose track of that. So, well, all right. I guess that we'll kind of wrap this up. So, I mean, until next week when we get to episode 5 and we get Tiffany Valentine and Nica, no last name, back.
Nica Jura, yeah, obviously.
Yes, we can cross out Just Let Go.
Yes, and cross out Chucky quiz.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.